Geordie Prepper here, and welcome to another Prepper News Network broadcast. We're covering the conflict in Europe at the minute. This is the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Ukrainians are putting the ARAT protection on their M1 Abrams side hulls. It's an upgrade to the already existing armour protection that they've got. And according to the experts, the bricks colloquial of a dynamic protection system are the first generation ARAT Abrams reactive armor tiles, ARAT. So the Americans supplied the Ukrainians with these M1 Abrams tanks. It would seem that they didn't supply them with the most up-to-date systems in them. Obviously this included the armor systems, but they've got their hands on the better protection and they've been installing them on the M1 Abrams. I would think this is probably out of necessity. I haven't looked at the numbers, but if you're upgrading the armor on your vehicles, then obviously you must be losing a significant amount of the vehicles compared to the amount that they received. And they want to keep their losses to a minimum. More countries are joining talks on a Ukraine peace formula. China's notably missing at the minute, but Ukrainian officials are hailing it as a good sign that the number of participants in a string of conferences on Zelensky's peace formula is growing. Nearly half from Europe, as well as 18 from Asia and 12 countries from Africa. Leaders of talks on the peace formula said a growing number of countries are working to help set the groundwork for Russia to join one day. An admittedly distant goal as the nearly 2-year war grinds on, and with neither side willing to cede ground. So obviously they're trying to get these peace talks a path to peace, but the significant party in this is missing at the minute, and I would think it would be important to have them involved from the beginning, even if it's in a minimal role at first. I mean, it does involve them. They have to be, or they should be involved from the very beginning, as far as I'm concerned, really. But the German defense minister has basically said that the war between Russia and NATO is pretty much guaranteed, and they've been going over war scenarios. The German Defense Ministry is contemplating a hypothetical situation in which Russia targets NATO's eastern flank in 2025, according to the classified Bundeswehr document obtained by German newspaper Bild. The document outlines a potential path to conflict between Russia and the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance. I mean, it's looking less and less hypothetical at this point in time. So, but I mean, it's happened a lot in the past with various documents. Oh, it was hypothetical. It was just a war game, and then obviously, these games turn into reality. So, I think basically what this is like a lot of stuff that you're going to see in the media. It's basically saying, oh, it was just a war game, or it was just a scenario. It was just hypothetical musings that were just written down and distributed at the top level. It was never ever meant to be like an actual plan. And then years later, it was like, well, yeah, they just followed that to basically the letter. But yeah, it seems less and less hypothetical, and basically just looks more like it's going to become a reality between Russia and NATO, that they are going to be involved in some sort of conflict, whatever and however that conflict starts and what shape that conflict takes is yet to be seen. It seems that the Russians may have lost a A-50 airborne early warning and control aircraft. They're saying that the weapon which hit the aircraft is not known. Could have been a surface-to-air missile, could have been an air-to-air missile, anti-radar missiles, or even a plain malfunction. One likely option is also friendly fire, which can happen in both, in these sorts of conflicts. They're saying, though, that the loss of the aircraft would be a heavy blow to the aerospace forces of the Russian Federation, and the Russian defense industry is not able to compensate the loss. I find that hard to believe, since if you're putting assets in this type of environment, that you would expect that there's a possibility that they would be lost, and I don't think that they would just have one type of these planes. Surely they would have several in reserve. I mean, I don't know this for sure, but there must be replacements in airplane hangars somewhere, or already in production, ready to be rolled out if they are lost. They're saying at 9 PM, a Russia A-50 airborne early warning. Control aircraft was shot down over the Sea of Azov. The second aircraft, which seems to have been hit, seems to be a related incident, was stricken and went to Kerch. An ex-user monitoring Russian strategic aviation said that the plane fell near Berdyansk and its tail number RF-50601. So it seems that the A-50 plane was lost, and from this it seems that the IL-22PP aircraft survived, and they requested a landing approach and emergency services to meet them on the tarmac. Russian offensive on Ukraine is in day 691, and the offensive will go on for the foreseeable future. Ukraine shot down 2 Russian airplanes, which was just covered. 3 Ukrainian missiles were shot down in Russian territory. More and more of the conflict is spilling over into Russian territory now. We're seeing that a lot more in the past weeks. The war in Ukraine is taking its toll on the Russians' healthcare system. I'd have to look into that, but I'm sure that's something that we can look into and cover in a future date. And it seems that Russia's wanting to strengthen relations with North Korea. Something which they're touching on in this article, and which has been said in a couple of other places as well, is that Russia's likely to go on the offensive, and they seem to be preparing offensive operations in the east, which will be something which will be coming in the coming weeks. So I think, given that they were launching a massive aerial bombardment of Ukraine, like I said in the previous video, that would be like a precursor to a ground offensive, and it seems that they're preparing for a large-scale ground offensive in the near future. And this article is basically saying that a war between NATO and Russia is imminent, according to a secret German armed forces document. So this is similar to the previous document that we were looking at, but I think it goes into a bit more detail. And it's basically saying that they're preparing for hybrid attacks by Russia on NATO. An escalation between NATO and Russia is expected as early as February. And this ground offensive that Russia seems to be preparing for could be an expectation of this. It could be an expectation of the NATO response to their ground offensive. And, you know, this could be what they're alluding to here, because if the Russian offensive is of such a large scale that NATO believes that Ukraine may fall, then they might actually could justify that to enter the war. Certainly a possibility. I mean, they can justify it any way that they want. NATO's involvement can be justified in many different ways. They could just make something up, and, you know, unfortunately, people would just accept it. Border conflicts and unrests with numerous casualties are possible in the Suwalki corridor, small corridor between Belarus and Kaliningrad that lies along the Polish-Lithuanian border. This was interesting. This article is talking about a media investigation has found that Russia is still obtaining defense-related components and equipment from Finland. And I'm pretty sure Finland, wasn't that the country that closed its border with Russia? It seemed that they wanted to put a bit of distance between them. It might have been because this investigation was going to come to light. So they wanted to basically seem that they were physically distancing themselves from Russia. But, you know, they're still supplying them with components that can be used in the defense industry. It says here that there are around 20 Finnish firms which have exported Russia components. These are small logistic firms whose owners have ties to Russia and that have offices located in tiny premises in southeastern Finland near large logistical hubs. One of these is based near Lapinranta, a Finnish city located some 30 kilometers away from the Russian border. Customs information suggests that the firm supplied sensors, diesel engines, fuel pumps, and components used in car gearboxes to Russia. And, I mean, media investigations will find that American firms are delivering stuff to the Ukraine. I mean, Finland is a NATO country, I believe, so that would look a bit bad on them, but I think maybe this border closure seems to have been instigated by this information possibly coming out. A NATO country still supplying stuff to Russia. I doubt Finland's the only one that's doing it, or still supplying equipment. And we've got another interesting article here. It's saying that the EU is more food dependent on Russia than before the Ukraine war. I mean, this doesn't surprise me at all, since Ukraine is pretty much the breadbasket of Europe in a lot of regards. That area obviously has been decimated. The amount that food production and all that irrigation and all that food, infrastructure is basically gone now. So where are you going to go for your food? Saying that the EU in particular is seeing the amount of nitrogen and urea it imports from Russia has rose over the past 2 years. Urea is the chief nitrogenous end product of the metabolic breakdown of proteins in all mammals and some fish. And Russia accounts for 34% and 40% of EU imports of both resources, respectively. So this is obviously a key source, fertilizer and components into fertilizer. Polish farmers are also going to resume their blockade at their Medica border crossing with Ukraine from this Thursday, as they say they have not received a signed assurance from the Prime Minister that their demands have been met. It is not the first time Holsifer has warned about the global over-reliance on fertilizer exports from Russia. This was Svein Tor Holsifer, the CEO of Norwegian firm Yara International. Half the world's population gets food as a result of fertilizers, and if that's removed from the field or some crops, the yield will drop by 50%. For me, it's not whether we are moving into a global food crisis, it's how large the crisis will be. So just, again, like another area, we were talking about the ramifications of the conflict and the wars in the world, and some of the financial, some of them are logistical. And then we have some which are a lot more critical, such as food reliance, fertilizer reliance, and in general food security. Alright, so that was another Prepper News Network broadcast. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be safe, be prepared, and I'll see you in the next broadcast.